Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is August 28, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Bill Brown. Where in the heck you calling in from, Bill?
From the little village of Minerve, France.
How cool is that? Well, we did the interview many years ago, maybe 10 or 12 years ago in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I really appreciate this. So it's sort of a revisit or part two. First question is, Bill, what is the best thing for a human being?
Good eating.
Oh my God, that's practical. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I think like pencil line drawings.
Oh my God, but that's you doing them or you looking at them?
Well, I love to do them, but I think all of my brain cells are firing when I'm looking at that kind of thing.
Right.
Because I mean, there's other forms of information that
Right.
maybe you're not totally attending to, but something about pencil drawings
But do
does it
you
for me.
look, are there besides your own, are there pencil line drawings you have turned to over the years, like just randomly, or is there some specific artist you're like, oh, I like to look at theirs?
Oh, that's a good question. I was just the other day we were looking at Agnes Martin's like these even
Yeah,
just like really faint like kind of
yeah,
minimalist lines, and I
yeah,
don't know. I was with that. I was on it for a while. And
yeah,
I was thinking about it. Something about that. Maybe it's the edge of like the visible and the invisible. There's
yeah.
like it's that line that kind of describes the place between seeing and not seeing, but
That's
also
good.
there's just the gesture too. I mean, there's so much, it's got all the kind of beauty of the sort of like the gesture of art, but then it also kind of it has a kind of precision too. Maybe writing. I mean, because my second answer would be like writing, like
Yeah,
handwriting, I think. And handwriting and like pencil drawings to me, I think maybe
yeah,
they're not so far apart.
yeah. It's
Um,
also reminds me of that visible and invisible. Either de Kooning or whoever they bought. I think somebody bought a pencil drawing of de Kooning and then he erased it. And
that's
and
awesome.
that was his piece of art,
Yeah, yeah.
erasing it, so it's really extreme. But why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Yeah, why do they? Why do they? I don't. It's a hard one, Jerry. For me, like, I mean, my mind immediately goes to like sci-fi. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I have a complicated relationship to that question, or so. Like because I don't know. Like, I sometimes wonder if humans are acting as like I can't help but think as a species, maybe we're acting on behalf of some other kind of consciousness.
Right.
And so is it that the sort of like millennial long project of human beings has been this kind of like data collection or information collection on behalf of like this other kind of consciousness? I sometimes wonder if that's
Yeah.
what it is, this whatever. I don't know what that is, like this universal consciousness that's like that needs us to see and think and discover,
Yeah.
on its behalf.
Other
Um,
almost
but
I'm thinking an otherness. We're gonna get into consciousness, but it also is amazing, Bill, because you're such a kind of original thinker, but down to earth at the same time. Oh, you went to Harvard, but at the same time, you're like in the back alleys of Detroit kicking some rusty bottle over to get a film shot. So, I mean, you really span this. But, when I ask people, why do we collect or gather information? 80 to 90% of people say survival. So this
mm,
is
mm,
amazing. I'm always happy when someone goes along with the consistency, but I'm almost more happy when they throw me a curveball. Like, where did that come from? Because there's no right or wrong answer. So,
Right.
do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking that it's innate, you know? I mean, it's somehow. I mean, I might it's a question that's easy to overthink, I think. I mean,
Yeah,
I, so I'm gonna go with innate.
yeah,
If I think that it's maybe there's like an evolutionary project going on here, you know, where we're like
yeah,
hopefully moving towards something. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know if we are moving towards something. I don't know if it is like linear that way, but I mean, maybe there's something about this
yeah,
collection that moves us somehow. So, and maybe that's part of like how we're built, how we're
yeah.
part of what we are.
But Bill, it is
So,
this. Everybody probably is pretty in agreement. Let's make the world a better place. I mean, it sounds
right.
like a Hallmark card, but in the long
Yep.
run, come on, man. That's the bottom line. Like, can't we all just get along? Come on. But the other flip of that, it's so easy to overthink. And that's exactly I'm I'm pursuing in these dialogues for people to go with their impulse, their hunch, their guess.
Right.
They go, well, that's a neuroscientist question. I goes, well, just give me your guess. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. And when people go, I don't know, I go, good, that's fine. Or I like when they pay, I can't answer that. It's like, wow, that's even better because it's not that I'm trying to get you to answer anything. It's just prompts. So, do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, definitely.
Wait,
That's a
yeah,
great question though.
yeah,
I can't think of I don't think my emotions are outside of my yeah,
yeah.
I definitely think yeah.
Well,
I mean,
you
is
know what?
there
Go
oh
ahead.
sorry, go. No, I was just gonna say, is there the possibility that they don't, I wonder? Or that
Well, yeah,
emotions
I mean,
exist?
well, one of my favorite answers was, this guy V. Vale, research
Yeah, yeah, the research guy. Yep.
dude, he goes, do thoughts create emotions? He goes, emotions create emotions. But it is. Anyways, we'll get it. Fill in the blank, Bill. I don't know what I think until I
Mm. Yeah, until I write it down.
yeah, see,
It's
that's,
probably I bet you're hearing that one a lot, but
no, I hear this is what I got it. McLuhan says, "I don't know what I think until I say it."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Joan Didion says, "I don't know what I think until I write it." And
Right,
a
right.
lot of people, I don't have this like a lot of my questions, I go, 80% of people say a lot of people say, "Do it, experience it." They go, "Think it." I don't know what I think until I think it. So that one's wide open.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
Chomsky says that a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Right.
What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Oh my God. That's a really yeah, no, it's horrible. I feel like I don't I mean, I think I only I so much for me, language is everything, Jerry. I mean, that's how I mean, sometimes I'm trying to get around it. I mean, I supposedly am making films that are audiovisual, and I sometimes feel like language is kind of anti-Semitic. I'm sort of always struggling with the fact that I'm really drawn to language. I'm always sort of I think I construct my life around language, um, and yeah, and particularly when it's not possible to navigate through the world with language. Um, I am definitely at a loss. I mean, I find it really threatening, and I feel really vulnerable. I don't know what to do. I think the only way I know how to sort of like negotiate with reality is through language. I have to say, like you know, whether that was from growing up in Texas and like, you know, trying to talk myself out of talk my way out of getting punched in the face, as a teenager. So like language was like a survival mechanism. It's my primary way of like, it's not my hand, it's not my eyes or like it's like language is the way it like it's the little tentacles that go out like the
Yeah,
ants like feeling the world. Like I feel like language is doing that for me, like
yeah,
sensing, touching the world, like feeling the shape of it. So yeah, when it doesn't work, I don't think I have a plan B. I really
yeah,
don't. I think I just keep trying to find the language, find the words, find the
yeah,
way, like a way to communicate with language.
yeah. I gotta tell you, one of my favorite answers was group hug.
See, I would be uncomfortable with the group
Yeah,
hug
yeah,
though.
I know, but
That's
it just sounds good. Again, it's sort of Hallmark card, like, well, when language breaks down, like you're in the grocery store and language breaks down, "Could I hug you?" You know?
Yeah, but I've been teaching, and I was thinking just this, like the last semester I was teaching, there was this moment where like there was a confusion of things, and like the class turned against me at this moment where I was trying to express myself with language, and it just wasn't working. I mean, I like, and I really like, but a group hug in that context would have probably gotten me fired. So
Right, that's what I mean. I mean, the sentiment of him saying that, I just loved it because, again, people go, "I gesture," uh, a lot of people go, "Seek plan B,"
right,
whatever.
right.
So, can humans think without language?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, so I guess it depends what we mean by language, right?
Yeah,
I think like if I think my knee-jerk reaction is can they think without words?
yeah,
Obviously, there's other languages, right?
yeah,
I don't know, maybe not obviously, but I would say yes. I mean,
yeah,
there's maybe other forms of language, but yeah, can they think without any form of language? Like, is thinking a language? I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know if like it's in my brain. It is. I read those articles where it's like, or those questions. They ask you like, when you're thinking, like, do you hear a voice? Do you see a word? Do you see an image? I mean, aren't like I guess I would say, well, those are probably all kinds of language, right? Like,
yeah.
maybe is there a thought beyond language? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's good. If we were gonna get into music, I always ask this, so
Music, right?
I'll just throw it in. What's more fundamental, music or language?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that language is a kind of music. So maybe music is the most
Yeah.
fundamental.
Yeah, that's Walter Pater said, "All art aspires to the condition of music." So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
poetry, film, sculpture,
Architecture, yeah,
wishes it could be as cool as music.
totally. I so buy that. I totally buy that. As the older I get, the more I don't like. Yeah, maybe yeah. To be a musician is kind of probably the coolest thing you
Yeah.
can be.
Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Hmm. After COVID, I think, and the experience of the last 3 years, we're feeling beings,
Yeah,
and it's tragic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Yeah, I mean, what's the soul? That's probably the
Yeah,
question to ask. Yeah, I think that's a hard one. Just I don't know what the soul is. I don't
yeah,
know what the soul is. I kind of wish I knew. I wish for a I I guess I have ideas that I wish were true, and I don't know.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know.
No,
Pass.
that's alright. It's interesting because, we have, these, hunches in, Lily Tomlin says reality is just a collective hunch. So we
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
this hunch that people think they know what thinking means and what soul means. So I thought Turing asked this second question too is interesting. Can machines think?
Mm. No, I know. Have you been playing around with any of the AI stuff lately?
Uh, I know people who do play around with it. I should have been playing around with it, but I've investigated it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about. Sabine's actually far more of an expert than I am, but I mean, thanks to her, I've had a chance to like chat with the chat bot.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, So when I chat with the chatbot, I just I troll I try to find the contours of its reality just by
Yeah,
asking stupid questions and and trolling it pretty much, I guess.
yeah,
Um, is it that, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't
yeah,
think so.
yeah,
At least I don't think anything that human beings are coming up with and inventing and putting into play. I think that there's, it's like what was it, that famous, like the chess play, like there was that, was it 19th century part, it was that thing that showed up. I think it was touring around England or something, but it was like it was like this mannequin with the turbaned head, and it would play
yeah,
chess with you. That there was
yeah,
actually some guy in there, who's playing chess. But the
yeah,
idea was like this automaton could beat you at chess. I
yeah,
I guess I still am feeling like that's what's going on.
yeah,
Some sort of pantomime of thinking rather than thinking.
yeah.
But,
No,
whether it gets there, I don't. But I also don't want to, like. I guess I don't want to. I don't want to fetishize human thought, like, as if like, oh, nothing could ever
yeah,
rise to the level of human thought. But
yeah.
I'm skeptical of anything that humans come up with being anything more than just sort of a reflection of, or a pantomime of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but I don't know.
that's McLuhan completely. Everything we invent extends some humanness.
Totally.
He said a line that's mind-blowing. He says, "There's nothing more human than technology." That is
Absolutely.
so if anyways,
I
it's
agree.
funny thing how people, when books came out, like, oh, books are bad. And then TV came out and go, TV's bad, but
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
books are good, But anyways, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think meaning, because I think I somehow have this idea that'll lead to happiness.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a cheating way to answer the question, but
No, I don't think it's cheating. You see,
I
that's what I like, is if you feel that you can just answer honestly, and then you go, "Oh, I'm kinda cheating." Well, then that's human to admit you're kinda cheating, but it doesn't mean you are cheating. To me, it means you're being honest because you're saying that. But it's like, I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, because he'd say meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't necessarily last. So,
absolutely, absolutely. No, I had to when I had up my own little line where when I was our how's our connect? Are we still live? I couldn't
yeah,
tell if we were breaking up.
yeah,
But I had once written myself this little thing in my, I keep this zine. I keep like my little journal,
yeah.
and I was saying that, happiness is that, the friend you want to have, but sadness is the friend who'll stick around with you. It's the more loyal friend.
The more loyal, that's good. That is good. More loyal friend, yeah. Through thick and thin. So, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how does it feel to me that yeah, I was raised religious, and I think I I mean, I think there was this idea that consciousness, isn't that like that's what God is, one of God's jobs, right? Is to sort of like create consciousness, or to like, I think I this idea that I think I've for a big part of my life there was this idea that consciousness was sort of external to me,
Yeah,
um, and I'm plugging into it, or I'm more or less kind of connected to some kind of like consciousness,
yeah,
outside of myself. I mean, now it's harder to think that consciousness isn't something where, you know, that we are generating it moment by moment.
yeah,
I don't know. It's an interesting. My dad, he passed away, but I mean, he kind of lost it. He spent quite a few years kind of in mental decline.
yeah,
And I don't know. I would think about like as that was happening. I mean, I couldn't really have the conversation
Yeah,
exactly, but I mean, I was thinking like, what is consciousness to him as like
yeah,
his as he sort of like parts of him are shutting down,
yeah.
um,
Well,
and
I
yeah,
addressed that, Bill, in exactly because I spent 8 days with my dad, and he was same, dementia or
yeah,
Alzheimer's or whatever.
yeah,
And I think it's the way humans are. They return to being childhood, and you don't have to worry about the car or your stupid things we worry about. You're just like chilled out. And I'd go to my dad, I'd go, Dad, you want to take a nap? And he'd go, Yeah. And then I
right.
go, Dad, you want to eat? And he goes, Yeah. I says, Okay, Dad, it's time to go to bed. Ready? He goes, Yeah. I says, Dude, we have the same lifestyle, eat and sleep, man. It's cool. I mean, it was the 8 days of my life to just chill with my dad, and he didn't. Does it matter? We already had you already had the times with them, you know, but
Yeah,
we're in this mode that we have to think, "Oh, it's sad. Alzheimer's is sad," or whatever, and it's just like I think that my one theory is Muhammad Ali. He's a big hero to me, and he just got the shit beat out of him for our entertainment, and
yeah, yeah,
made up poetry and danced around and had fun. And then
yeah,
at the end of his life, he sort of either consciously or subconsciously checks out. So everybody
yeah.
thinks, oh, he's a vegetable. And on the side, he's just sort of snickering. Yeah, right. I'm just hanging out. Because I know someone they used to sneak his meds into his ice cream, and
Yeah.
he would literally kind of throw the ice cream away.
Whoa, whoa. That's
So,
amazing. Yeah.
I know what you're saying because that's what we all have to go through. What do we do with our parents? And is the same thing going to happen to us? And yeah, we didn't have kids, so who's going to take care of us?
I know, it's
We're boomers are like, we're fucked. Anyways, it's good. The whole thing, because you touched on that earlier, just acting on behalf of another consciousness.
Yeah,
That's what I like that you called this other it almost seemed, because you said it's sort of sci-fi, that it's like, uh
totally,
yeah,
totally. I mean,
yeah. So, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
mm, yeah, I don't know. I mean, isn't it? It's supposed to be I mean, this is what I hear. It's thoughts are electricity, right?
Yeah.
But is electricity faster than light? I mean, that's a nerdy question of like,
Yeah.
what?
But again, it's your guess, Bill. Just off the top of your head, what would you say?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
You don't have
I
to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say. I would say like, what's faster, electricity or light? Is electricity a kind of light? I don't need. I s- didn't.
Yeah.
I need to go back to my high school physics. I'm gonna say
Well,
thoughts. I'm gonna go with thoughts though, Jerry,
yeah. Well, for
because anyway,
$100, you
light's
win,
got
dude.
nothing. Oh,
No,
great.
you win. There's no right or wrong answers, but saying thought is the right answer, so you got it right.
No, I was gonna say too, like, and light can't argue with me anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, I can
that's
say what I
right.
want.
But it is funny how many people say light. And Bill, I ask a lot of these questions because I want them to answer the way I want them to answer. But I
Yeah, right.
don't say but I always say that, well, none of these questions have right or wrong answers, but that one you got right, because I love it when they say speed of thought. I mean, you could, but it is, we did a tetrad on electricity one year because
Yeah.
we think we invented it.
Right.
The
Right.
the
Right. Right. Right.
Hyde and Ben Franklin. And
Totally.
this woman says, "No, you can't do tetrads on things that aren't invented." And she goes, "No, electricity is in our bodies." And
Totally.
it was like, wow.
That's
So,
great.
so Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
Mm.
Jan Rayner said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Mm. Wow, a new tool.
Yeah.
A new
Well, let me just Bill, let me explain. Because I, opened some of these questions with cue quotes, you don't
Okay.
have to put the quote into the contents of the question,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you don't have to even say "new tool." It's basically what I'm asking is what tool do you gravitate towards? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can put in the context of new, and then you can put in the context of, um dismantling the master's house if you want. And then that
Totally,
is,
totally,
well,
totally.
what did Audre Lorde mean by that? Did she mean white supremacy, or like my favorite is, when Frank Zappa asks, "Who are the brain police?" Is he insinuating, oh, it's some evil capitalist consumer society, or is it your brain inside you? Is it the voice inside? Is the brain police you? You know?
Totally. Well, I gotta think that there's that. I mean, I think that feels a little. It's a little depressing to think we couldn't dismantle. I mean, all we're left. I feel like all I've got are the master's tools.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you can. I think you can. Like, I would hope you can. I mean, I mean, just putting it down for me, just like making it more kind of like as I'm trying to like think about this in terms of like what I do or what I think about, that was always something exciting about like say filmmaking. I mean, for a long time there was this idea that filmmaking is this kind of pursuit that is outside of like, I think one of the great things that happened with filmmaking was that, the idea of like the amateur, the the amateur had like a place in the mix, like that like it wasn't necessary to have sort of institutional support. It wasn't necessary to be like part of a studio, to have fancy equipment.
Yeah.
That it was possible though to use these tools as an amateur and then kind of like point them at, systems of oppression or at like, these kind of structures of power. I mean, I feel like in some ways that's the whole history of say experimental filmmaking, or at least one history of experimental filmmaking is this idea of like, pointing these tools back at structures of power
Yeah.
as a way to sort of like critique them, satirize them, interrupt or disrupt them. Um, but man, I mean, I feel like I still have like a Bolex, and I don't have a new tool.
Dude,
I do feel like
I
I
was
feel
gonna
like these
ask
tools
you.
can be critical, right?
Right, no, what you summed up there was beautiful because it is, it's just basic. A tool you suggest is filmmaking, let's say that. But did you see the film Beyond the Bolex, 2017?
I've been recommended it. I still haven't seen it. I've been
It's
wanting
it
to see
is
that film.
it is totally mind-blowing because, it's like one of your students come up to you and go, "Bill, I'm gonna make a film about my grandfather." "Oh, yeah?
Totally.
Well, what'd he do?" "He invented the Bolex." You're like, "What?"
No, I know, I know. Could
And
you
it's
imagine, by the way, how many people told it was this? Oh, it was a woman, right? There's
it's
so
a
many people who
woman, and it took her
told her
16
like,
years. It
you
sort of
got to make
blew
a
her out.
film about that.
Yeah, but it sort of blew her out, and the guy who invented them made experimental films.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and
I
so
didn't know.
she has some of the majors. She has Jonas Mekas and, I think it's Barbara Hammer,
Okay.
uh, and a couple of these major kind of,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
icons of experimental film. But at the end, she's got a inventory like, well, Jackass and David Lynch and Steven Spielberg all started with 60. So she does it really fast, just to give it like they all started with a Bolex too, just not to
Totally.
make it like, so it's just an essential, even just watching the 2-minute trailers enough. That's what I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
on films now. But I'm just saying the Bolex as a tool. But what you did say reminds me of, Sidney Lumet, who made socially conscious films. He goes,
totally.
"Yeah,
Right.
filmmaking can't do shit, but it ain't gonna keep me from trying."
Exactly.
That is like, yeah, you're gonna change shit with a fucking film. You good luck. But it is beautiful to have that attitude. And we know that films have had a huge impact, and then they're only 130 years old, you
Totally.
know,
Totally.
to the
And the flip
point that,
side of that is, I think we could all agree, like media is used in these really toxic,
yeah,
nasty ways. So why? I mean, why not?
yeah,
Why can't we like entertain the idea that
yeah.
there could be like this like possibility of
Yeah, that's, uh, Craig Baldwin's great retort to me. I says, There's a comment I read, "Filmmaking as an art form has been swindled by capitalism." And he goes, "Yeah, and it's our job to swindle it back." It's like, "Don't become your enemy," you know?
That's a great
Like,
answer,
invent TikTok or something better than film, which is what really is film. But,
man.
that was good. So, here's the question I told you about earlier. What
Okay.
new what new toy do you suggest?
Oh man, what new toy? See, my brain doesn't go there right
Okay,
away.
that's fine.
So I,
But, it's
I
funny, I asked the tool question, and then someone said, "Well, what about toys?" So then I added, because really this whole thing is, me and you versus the wording on the questions.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, for sure.
I like it when people say, "Well, change the verb. It's not create, it's not, this," or when I say these questions, "Is it more this or more that?" This woman goes, "The word more doesn't function in your question." I says, "Hallelujah, that's what I want. I want us to tear down the wording. It's just they're just prompts."
No, and I'm
So,
all for it. I think that, by the way, I mean, going from tool to toy, I think it's really genius, and it goes from, I think, in a way, from work to play.
yeah,
And I'm thinking about, like, I was all into like the situationist and this idea of, like, the ludic, and like this idea of play as like a way, like, the politics of play, which I wish I could say I'm more successful as a practitioner
yeah,
of play, but I still completely believe in this idea of play. And I mean, maybe that's in some ways why my brain doesn't go, like, for me, the tool and the toy. I mean, maybe tool isn't even the language I would use. I mean, I think the Bolex is pure toy. I mean, it's this thing that you wind up. It's like a wind up toy. When I show it to my students, I'm always like, this thing's crazy. You wind it up. I mean, it's like
yeah,
it goes 30 seconds. It's like one of those little race cars that you wind up and let it
yeah,
go. And like,
yeah.
but I like whoever was saying that about, like this idea of the. I'd like to suggest that, like, yeah, screw tools. Let's just talk about toys and
Boys,
play,
yeah.
and rather than tools and work. So
It's so well put, Bill, because it is, back to music. You don't work music, you play music.
totally,
Like,
totally.
you're not going, "I'm gonna be a filmmaker to play." Yeah, good luck. You're gonna end up like Bill. You're gonna make experimental films, and then you're gonna have to teach for 30 years.
Totally, man.
Or like, Bill Bill Solomon, well, he was so fun to ask all these questions because he really was. He goes, "I'm a professional experimental filmmaker." And I was like, "Yeah, right. You showed at Sundance, you still have to teach."
No, exactly, man.
So,
Uh,
that's a
that's
great moment to put this in. Where'd you get your work ethic from? Because you do have a work ethic. I mean, I
no,
feel
totally.
you, and I do too, but we're both "Oh, we're having fun," but, like, you know,
No, I know, I know. No, I know. That's a good call out too, Jerry, because it's like it is. Yeah, I mean, I say this about play, but meanwhile, it is like, I was doing some shooting in Lubbock, back in Texas, in June. I mean, I was working I was getting up at crack of dawn. I was just like putting in, 16-hour days. I mean, it was grueling, and like, I mean, it's hard to say that's play. I mean,
yeah.
I'm my own, like, worst boss. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
the worst boss you could imagine.
But
So
where'd you
yeah,
get that, Bill?
no, I know. I,
From your
I'm sure.
parents or on your own, or
I think some combo. I've got three really awesome sisters, but none of
yeah.
them were as kind of a, at, like, is it a personality trait or something? Because, yeah, none of that, like, they are much more relaxed.
Wow.
Um, or however you want to put it. Like, I would definitely say, like, I mean, they might argue with me, but I would definitely say I was the one who was, staying up late,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, it did. I think it did probably come from my parents. I mean,
Yeah.
I talked to Sabine about this a lot too, because there was this idea too, like, among, like, maybe middle class folks, that, that's the idea, right? That you work hard to make something out of your life or something. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. That's that kind of really, really bourgeois middle class idea, and
Yeah.
um, and like it did sink in. Like I mean, as much as I love doing, you know, my art projects, I also like I think I do put myself under a lot of pressure and stress,
Yeah.
and like I have like sort of high expectations, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I mean I don't want to blame my parents though. I mean
No, no, no. It
because
is. It's
like
just. It's sort of like the American way, especially. Will you do you consider yourself a boomer? Are you a boomer or post?
so Gen X.
You're Gen X. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
yeah.
boomers and Gen X got it from their parents because their parents were like, "Come to America," or "I'm in
Totally.
America," and then the third paragraph in work ethic in Wikipedia, it has it says this could be a scam from consumer culture, and it's like, ah, like
No kidding.
you ever hear of Slack? You know, chill out. That's came from Texas too. So Chubb sub
Totally, totally,
how do
totally,
you
totally.
relax and chill out? Well, I got to work on relaxing. No.
Nice.
But this is a good moment because I'm doing a big project on archiving. And,
Okay.
just archiving alone is an amazing thing because the noun archives means 1600 records or documents
Okay.
preserved as evidence. And then it goes to the
Ah.
Greek word town hall, like Archon, the first ruler, to be the first, the public building. And then the verb archiving is 1400s, to keep self free from harm. So, have you literally thought of where your archives are going to go? You have, especially having 16 millimeter, you have negatives in work prints and in your zines. Where have you thought of that at all, or you're just like, hey, if I die, Sabine, take care of it?
Yeah, right. No, no. I mean, Jerry, that's actually it's come up like a lot recently. I mean, the short answer was, on the one hand, Mark Toscano got me off the hook a little bit with the as far as archiving goes, because I don't know if you've come across if you've heard about this, but Mark, at least a while ago, this was pre-COVID, so it's a few years ago, but apparently there was some space at the Academy Archive where he's working, and he was approaching filmmakers he knew who had NEGs, who were working in analog media, and offering to adopt their work prints and their NEGs and have the Academy store them. So like on the one hand, like I didn't even have to. I was just like, hell yeah, please. That's what a great thing. I mean, I'm sure the
So he
Academy
came
Archive.
he came to you even more so. Were you contemplating before? Does the college you teach at have an archive and you could put some there? Or
No, no, no. I mean, nothing like not for film. They
did
wouldn't do
you
that.
have any archive in mind besides Mark?
No, I mean, like I said, so he had that idea. I was like, heck
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, prior to that, my stuff was just sitting in Texas in a
yeah,
closet.
yeah.
But I mean, the sort of follow up to that was, so, my parents passed away, and then that house gets sold, and like a bunch of my stuff wound up in storage. And like just this past summer, one of the things I did when I was back in Texas was I had a, storage shed, and I had to figure out like I was faced with these
What to
horrible
do
archival
with
questions.
so the
Like,
archive stuff that didn't go to Mark, where did it go?
yeah, so I mean the stuff that allows like my prints to be remade, Mark kindly has that stuff.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of stuff got trashed,
Oh, you should have
which
told
is
me where that dumpster was.
no,
Dumpster diving, that's like hitting gold. So,
but I
but
try,
all your
but
dream whips, like extra
no,
copy.
so I've like I have, I mean, while I'm still alive and kicking, I've been trying to hold on to the stuff that is kind of most crucial. Like I do have like maybe my own sort of like portable archive of, yeah, my zines and films. But I was just going to say, like one like the biggest challenge for me with that stuff in Texas was I had a 6-plate Steenbeck that I made all my 16 millimeter films on, and I I was determined that Steenbeck find a new home. But I mean, Jerry, it was
You
impossible.
never found.
Well, I was just gonna say it is impossible to find anybody who wants one. I mean, it's just like, I mean, if I remember when I got that thing, 30 years ago or however long ago it
Yeah,
was, and I mean, I couldn't have been happier. I love this thing. Um,
yeah,
no, but after a ton of work, so part of the reason I kept that storage shed in Lubbock as long as I did was it had the six plate in it, and I was like, I have to find a home for this thing. I'm not going to be a Steenbeck owner who allows this Steenbeck to, wind up at the salvage yard or whatever.
yeah.
And so after a lot of work, so somebody I know who teaches in Asheville, North Carolina, she was down with adopting it, and she and a student, like, she works at a little teeny college in Asheville, and she convinced the college to lend her one of their transport vans that they probably use for, like, the soccer team. And she drove this thing all the way from Asheville to Lubbock, Texas. It was like a 3-day trip, and she came, and we hauled this, like, pushed this thing into her van, and she took it back.
Oh
So
my,
it
that is a
found
great story.
it found, and actually I shot a little of this too, and
Yeah,
I mean, it became, I mean, for me that Steenbeck became something like, I
yeah.
don't know, it became really. I mean, some of the other stuff, I mean, it was easier to let go of. Maybe it didn't feel as essential, or um, but the Steenbeck,
That's that's self-curating and that's self-discerning. Like the real question though is archiving innate or invented? Like the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin with them. But
right,
if we go with the philosophy of the East, be here now. Why in the heck should we worry about anything in the past when we're trying to live in the present? And then your word of legacy. I mean,
right.
definitely, Bill, you've made films that are legendary in a lot of ways, especially in the Ann Arbor Film Festivals, like the new James Benning. But again, it is uh, well, Wyndham Lewis saying the artist lives in the present and
Yeah,
writes a detailed history of the future. So,
yeah, yeah,
why,
yeah,
what is this about humans wanting to think we need to hold on to something? And this thing of, oh, I'm worthy when you're trying to live in the present. I mean, it's sort of switching. You talked about the mechanics of archiving, now more the philosophy.
yeah,
You know that what you've done is important and it's touched people, but some people, like, I read it today, Mike Tyson said, I don't care if people remember me. I only care if my family remembers me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
was sort of touching, but it's
yeah.
almost like he's saying, I do care by saying that I am a legacy. It's like Zappa said the same thing. I don't care how you document me. That sounds like what presidents worry about. And it is like, any thoughts on this philosophy behind archiving?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there, Jerry. It's like it is like, on the one hand, as an artist, I think it's, if it's hard to let go to what may possibly be material for a project or something you work on. I think that, like, that's a pretty simple kind of, I think that's maybe a pretty straightforward justification for the archive. I mean, and I know that Sabine will get mad at me because I've got all these like 60 millimeter projectors that I've kind of, I'm a little bit of a hoarder, and I have some installation projects in mind. So it really is. I'm not a gearhead. It's just I have some ideas that might actually make, for some interest,
Yeah,
what I hope might be some interesting projects. So I mean, there's that, right? There's that
yeah,
idea that you don't want to let go because this stuff might be, and I'm sure even not, people who aren't artists have that same idea. Like, I
yeah,
don't want to let go of it because, it
yeah,
might be useful at some point. But
yeah,
I mean, my partner's mother is having the same issue as she gets older with a lot of the things she's collected over time. So they traveled a lot, as she was, married to a guy who traveled a lot. They accumulated objects from their travels, and I think for my mother-in-law, it is a kind of reflection or projection of her life, and to let go of it is to in some ways say, this, my experience of living, this journey I've been on as a human being, like, for me just to let it get scrapped is in some ways to say it didn't matter. I think for her, it is like the accumulated life experiences, all of these objects. They're not, it's not this, that they're objects, they're connected to memories and experiences. And I think that is really, really hard. Like that kind of archive, that kind of idea of the archive, I think is something that is incredibly painful to like let go. It's hard to be sort of like blasé about it,
Yeah.
to say I can let go, which is in a way saying like my life as it's been, I can let go. It's
Yeah.
a moment of saying I can let go, and I think it's so hard to say I can let go.
Yeah.
You know,
But is that innate or invented? Do you think
ah,
that sort of, you know, need or want? Because I mean, it's sort of like no one said this is like squirrels saving acorns.
yeah,
Is it like, oh,
yeah,
I will need these to eat? Well, there's enough acorns, just go eat some. But everything, it's why do we, and then it's like I love when you go, well, she says I'm a bit of a hoarder. It's like, no, you're an archivist. No, hoarder,
no,
archivist,
no, right, the
that
fine
you
line.
legitimize it, like hoarding's bad. You know, if you haven't seen it, the new book on Harry Smith is Godhead.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
Oh
Was he a
God.
hoarder?
Oh, Harry Smith was
I didn't
major.
know. Okay.
I mean, and he was a very and just so all over the place. But it's like, no, he's not a hoarder. That's what the label gets labeled on him, because he's got, just like you were, I can use these 16 millimeter projectors.
Totally, 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 totally.
No, there's too much. So so anyways, we'll sort of get back to that, but that was good we touch on that. And I got to go out of order, because then I've got to throw this one in, is can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Mm. I do have some early memories that I can, I, I like. It's hard for me to. There's a couple that are really early. I just want. I mean, it's not a profound. It doesn't. It's a memory that I don't know why it got stuck in my brain, but I must have been incredibly little because my mom was giving me a bath in the kitchen sink. So obviously I was small enough that I could fit in the kitchen sink. Apparently, she would give me a bath in the kitchen sink when I was small
Yeah,
enough for her to do that. And I can remember looking. There was a window behind. So back then we lived in Ohio, like in the suburbs of Cleveland.
yeah,
And I remember looking out the window, and it must have been the evening. It must have been afternoon, late afternoon, and we had a yard, a pretty big yard that ended in kind of a row of trees, and there was a pine tree, like a big pine tree in the very back. And I can remember the top of this pine tree, for whatever weird reason, it was a little bit square. Like, I don't know how to describe this. Like, you
yeah,
think of a pine tree as this kind of pointed thing, but at the
yeah,
very top of it was something that looked almost art like a box. And it must
yeah,
have just been like some peculiarity of the shape of this tree.
yeah,
But I remember asking like, I saw the shape and I kind of understood, like somehow, that it was different than a tree. And I remember asking her, "What's that?" And of course, she had no idea what I was looking at, so I,
right.
I think she wasn't able to answer the question.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
that's I,
that's
I,
pretty
I
detailed, Bill. That's beautiful. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
that's a good question. I mean, I think that probably depends on what those memories are, right? And what,
Yeah,
like, I could imagine being cursed by memories. I feel like I have the privileged position, like that privilege of having memories that are mostly memories that feel like a blessing, not a curse.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, boy, that definitely sounds like a question for, you know, the kind of things you're remembering. That,
yeah.
I mean, dependent on the kind of things you're remembering.
Well, it's back to this thing about tools too. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're
Yeah,
broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions.
right.
Like Kenneth Anger dying, my favorite line is, the day cinema was born, the day cinema started was a black day for humankind. That is like, we're fucked now. And so I ask you, Bill, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Right, right. Is that the sort of Cassandra, the prophet who no one listens to,
I
right?
don't know that.
Yeah.
Cassandra?
Yeah,
It's
I think like in Greek mythology,
okay.
Cassandra, I think maybe it had to do with Troy. I'm sure I'm getting it all confused. I think Cassandra was Greek and she was warning, um,
Right.
or was she Trojan? And maybe she was Trojan and she was warning that Troy was. Anyway, she was predicting.
Yeah.
She was plugged in, and
Yeah.
everyone ignored her for whatever reason.
Plugged
And
in,
yeah,
but it's also even some artists don't even know that they're exposing the hidden psychic effects or dealing with them. Some artists are conscious in doing it and some aren't, but it seems as though art kind of does this, and
for
then
sure.
it seems as though we, meaning the artist and the consumers of art, tend to ignore that they're doing this. And the question is why?
I know the question is why. I mean, what is that about? I mean, I don't know why. Why is it like? Is it that it's? But also, I mean, I guess the other thing is like, if that's what artists are often doing, and artists have an audience. I mean, people are say
Yeah,
attracted to, or they find the art compelling and engaging, but are still not receptive to sort of the underlying
yeah,
kind of message or implications of the art.
yeah,
I think. I mean, is that because unfortunately we're doomed as humans to sort of like kind of encounter everything as entertainment or
yeah,
something? Like
yeah,
my question for that, I guess my counter question to that would be: are there societies that have enough
yeah,
respect for artists, or for whom, like, in which artists have enough kind of stature that that's
yeah,
not the case? I mean, maybe that's the whole part. Like, we're talking about, like, yeah, artists, like, some poor American artist schmuck,
yeah,
nobody, in the hierarchy of voices is
yeah,
like several tiers below the TikTok influencer, who's several tiers below the
yeah.
celebrity entertainer, whatever. Like, is it quite like, are there cases though where the artist is you know listened to or attended to? um
Well, there are artists. It's what you're saying is a lot of things, and I love it. It's like being John Cage. That's a very good question. I wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer. Because it is like you're like, well, yeah, why? Because in the entertainment point was good because that snowballs into this following question. But the Balinese, McLuhan loved this line: the Balinese have no word for art. They
right.
do everything as well as they can.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's not like that woman photographer in Chicago who was there at the same time Henry Darger. These outsider artists, are
Right.
they doing this? Broadcasting the hidden psychic effects. Well, yeah, in a lot of ways, they're doing it almost more pure because they're like driven. They're not like, well, I can get a show in the gallery now, or I, you know, it's sort of like this idea with the world we're in is have you noticed how films become festival made? They're like, I know how
Of
to
course.
make the film that will play in your festival, and so
No,
yeah,
Jerry,
yeah,
we just went. I don't know if you're familiar. So there's this photography festival that's really well known over here in this town in the south called Arles, and they
yeah,
have a big photo festival. But we were
yeah,
having the same conversation because they had sort of the prize winners. So they have one program of work is coming from kind of young photographers, mostly European,
yeah,
and these are kind of like up and comers.
yeah,
And I mean, you walk away from it and you're like, oh God, I mean, it was a bunch of work that seemed to be checking all the boxes, that
yeah,
was like kind of designed to be curated, or was
yeah,
designed around a certain idea of curation, which felt like,
yeah,
in a way, it kind of like it sort of shirked all of its responsibility. I don't know. It felt like it
yeah,
was a cop out, like
yeah,
art made to be hung in on the walls of a particular kind of festival. You know, that's yeah.
It's really hard too because it goes to Harold Bloom's anxiety of influence. You absorb your influence and then you abandon them. Yeah, right. Good luck.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
my big thing in Ann Arbor going for 30 out of 60 years is, yeah, then everybody starts teaching experimental films. Then the students become clones of their teachers,
I
and
know,
their
I know.
first film that is a definite imitation of their teacher is their best film. That's really bad, It's like, oh no. But go back. How do you spell the Photo Fest in France? The
Yeah, yeah,
RO.
yeah.
How
I think you'd love it. So it's ARLES.
LES. Okay, yeah. And
Yeah.
so no, that was really good. And so let's go to this entertainment uh because we call it entertainment sometimes. And it's like this weird thing because yeah, no, the classic line is Tom Anderson at Cal Arts telling me, "Oh yeah, David Lynch says even if you're watching a shitty film, you can study the lamp designs in the
Right, right, right,
like.
right.
Give me a break! I gotta watch Hollywood films and look at a fucking lamp design." But it is like you can see any piece of art and go, "Well, this is what I like in it. This is what I don't like," and you
Yeah.
become critical thinking skills. But this is McLuhan in 57. It's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. The distinction merely relieves people of the responsibility of looking into the matter. It's like setting up the distinction between didactic and lyric poetry on the ground that one teaches and one pleases.
Right.
However, it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So,
Yeah.
as an educator, did they train you? Here's how you teach, Bill. Here's how you keep their attention. Most teachers tell me they didn't teach us that. We had to learn on the job. I got to entertain these kids so that they'll pay
No.
attention so I can but this idea is entertainment and education whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So there's a couple elements there. What does more effectively mean and what does pleases mean? So just your thoughts on that. Education, entertainment, pleasing and effectively. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting because yeah, I think that you can kind of take. I think you can take those ideas in different ways. Yeah, I mean, that idea of pleases. You know, on the one hand, what immediately comes up is that boils my blood as a educator or somebody, yeah, an untrained teacher, is that yeah. I mean, increasingly, the job is about entertaining this. I mean, because the way I don't want to rant about that, but because when you are working at a university or when you're teaching, you know, you put in this like increasingly put in the position of like the what is it, the client provider relationship, or I'm forgetting, but like, you know, the idea is that the students, you know, increasingly the school is pushing this idea that students are our clients,
Yeah.
and so it's necessary to sort of like cater to the client, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's probably a little akin to this idea of pleasing, you know. And in
Yes.
fact, it's gotten to the point where like yeah, the students have sort of internalized that idea. Like if they are not being entertained at every moment,
Yeah.
then they, you know, they get upset and they actually feel like they're not getting, you know, the bang for their buck or value for their money, you know, or they sort of reject whatever it is that's like going on in the classroom unless it is a moment where they're being kind of entertained, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is interesting to think about like what, you know, that there's another way of thinking about pleasure, you know, and there's the pleasure of encountering difficult idea. You know, there's another kind of pleasure
Yeah.
that like I don't encounter as much with my students, unfortunately. You know, I mean, I think for a lot of them it really is like, are you more interesting at this moment than my Instagram feed? And
Yeah.
I would say 99% of the time I'm not, you know, and
Yeah.
it's just it's hopeless and it's frustrating and sad. On the other hand, there's the rare student for whom like, yeah, pleasure is in the sort of challenges, the frustrations, the difficulties and the frictions of
Yeah.
education, you know, of encountering ideas that they haven't encountered before, that they don't know, like your questions, like they don't know what to think. And like it's
Yeah.
moments where it's causing them to think and maybe run into like ways they've been thinking that maybe they are suddenly forced to kind of reconsider or address anew. And there, I mean, there is like, I think there are kinds of students, whether students in college or students more generally, who for whom that is a real pleasure,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like, yeah, maybe that's sort of like, depending on the kind of like the sort of like the kind of like connotation of pleasure or pleasing,
Yeah.
maybe two ways to think about that. But in the end, yeah, I mean, I think whatever the pleasure is, that is, I think, an effective way to educate. Whether, you know, whether we're talking about,
Yeah.
I mean, because there are those teachers who are really good at that too, of sort of like doing a song and dance, and I think apparently they are effective, as
Yeah.
I've been told, like they are effective. But I would also like to think there's the kind of teacher who like creates kind of frictions that
Yeah.
provide a different kind of pleasure as a kind of path toward education.
Yeah. The
I,
Cal Arts is interesting, as I've lectured there a couple times, but you know, it's just this like appears to be like a rich kids college so they can fund. Disney started it to funnel people into his industry, and then
yep.
Mike Kelly and Pee Wee Herman showed up and went, uh-oh. You know, because there are the exceptions in that. It's like, how do you flip it? Because if the kid is hypnotized by his Instagram feed, how do you, as the teacher, help them realize, well, you can flip that and make art out of that, or you can apply that to this assignment? That's not like it's not like, oh, you got to go do, like, you self-imposing, I'm going to work for 16 hours shooting in Lubbock. It's like, you know, there's something about that, the weaving of the two, you said pleasure encountering the difficult,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I wanted to, there's one CalArts professor I heard, they didn't teach their students well because the students were potentially going to take their gallery space. So
Oh my
that
God.
sounds like horrible. But do English teachers do that? Like, you're going to get the publishing deal before me. Like, it's like you going, I'm not going to teach you that well because I want to win the main prize in Ann Arbor, not you. So it was almost like people want, no, that's more in the art world. Because I like to
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
does that sound like it's a horrible idea, but maybe it exists. I didn't have any proof, but does it exist more in the art world, or does it exist in all teaching? And someone said, no, it exists in the art world. So who knows? But it is that,
I bet it is the art world, though. You know,
it's
I mean,
more
because you are,
so. Yeah.
well, because these kids are getting plucked right out of their, you know,
Yeah.
MFA and right into like, you know, a fancy show.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that there's a way that, like, a teacher, especially one who's a little older, is feeling threatened by this crop
Threatened.
of, you know,
That's
of
the word.
competitors, you know? So, and that is not the case. Well, you know, as you know, Jerry, the experimental film world is ridiculously lucrative. But despite that, I haven't experienced that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
no, I
the
mean, it's
whole. Yeah.
the
Go ahead.
students. I mean, I think I was going to say, I wish there were. I don't know. In some ways, I wish the dynamic were different. You know, I mean, I think the pushback. Unfortunately, the pushback I'll get from students is like, it's more just, it's indifference. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, that's a heartbreaking thing that happens, and I'm just trying to get used to it. And
Yeah.
it's getting worse as I get older because I'm more out of touch with, I think,
Yeah.
the immediate concerns of, like, you know, a 19-year-old or 18-year-old kid. But it is pretty heartbreaking when you know, you put on the table things that are meaningful to you,
Yeah.
and you try your best to even kind of like give them some context, because you know you can't just throw,
Yeah.
and sometimes that doesn't work, just throwing stuff out. And
Yeah.
despite all that, you know, you'll have students who are indifferent or
Yeah. And
actively hostile. And
we were lucky because we sort of felt like you're pulling the curtain, or people were pulling the curtain back and goes, here's some real gems. And now any kid can go on Ubu Web and see the entire history of experimental film. And it's amazing because when I find younger people that I work with and they go, oh, I know who Wallace Frampton is, I was like, how in the heck did you know that? You know,
right,
I'm like
right,
amazed at some of the things that they do, you know,
yeah, yeah,
know
yeah,
about, you know. So, but you know, the hidden psychic effects question and in the artist being the intent of the race, I follow up with this question. Do artists have moral obligation?
I mean, the Catholic part of me would say yeah, but honestly, no, I don't think so. You know, and I mean, maybe that's partly feeling grumpy about the place artists find themselves right now, particularly in the U.S. You know, where all art, and I'm gonna sound like Scrooge or like a monster, so forgive me. But you know, this idea that art has to be, say, educational
Yeah,
or uplifting. A lot of times, that's how grants are kind of structured.
yeah,
And it's just like, I don't, you know, does art need to be moral? I mean,
yeah,
I don't think so. And in fact, you know, you know, there's that fine line between moral and moralistic, I guess.
yeah,
Or maybe there's just a different way of looking at or answering that question where it's like, it is, you know, maybe good art is necessarily moral. Maybe I would say that if it's good, it's moral, whatever
yeah,
that means. Like, I mean, I feel like if it is good art, like whatever it's doing something that is moral. You know, I
yeah,
mean, if it is engaging us,
yeah,
if it's transformative, then I mean, I feel like that might be some other way of defining the
yeah.
moral. Um,
But saying having the guts to say or the intelligence to say no in some sense, Bill, is good for me because it's of course it's no, because what about Buñuel or Pasolini and these
right.
or John Waters or whoever, like this shit, it's like Mike Kelly's obit in the New York Times said one critic said his art made me feel soiled.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that's every Finnegan's Wake reading session we have. They go they go to all these different realms, and then eventually we go to poo poo caca, you know, and all these intelligent literature person people are talking about farting and sucking and masturbation. I'm like, this just gives them the out to say, oh well, this highbrow literature guy talked about. It must not be that bad. It's all is natural human things. But that was good. So, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought. Let's see. I mean, you know, again, the annoying quibble with the question is am I afraid of ideas? You
Yeah,
know, so
by ideas in
but I
general.
don't want to. I don't want to quit. I'd like to think that, like, I like to think generally, though, like
Yeah,
generally,
yeah,
like I think that's fine.
yeah. No, a
Um,
lot of people say that, Bill. They go, "I'm not afraid of ideas," but
no, I know I could. I'll say new though. I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure, like, because I'm scared of stuff I haven't encountered before. I mean, I'm definitely a chicken, and so
yeah,
I'll say like the new if it means you know, ideas I don't know the full implications of. You know, it's still, and ideas that could generate unforeseen consequences. I think that is, I am naturally terrified of that, of
yeah.
like the unforeseen consequences.
That's you know, this guy I interviewed. He knew you would have loved him, Roman, yesterday. He knew where I got it. He says,
Oh wow,
that's the John Cage quote. I can't
cool, cool.
understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones.
Yeah,
And then there's the counter. The guy who invented the intermittent windshield wiper, Charles
yeah,
Kettery, people are very open-minded about new things as long as they're exactly like the old ones.
yeah. No, I mean,
You
that's
know,
true.
it is
I think.
amazing because you know,
Totally.
like, well, we were freaked out when cell phones came in, but we were all addicted to phones. What's the fucking difference? It's just like, but you when you're growing up, tell me just briefly one person within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would probably say my sister, my second oldest sister, Kathy, um, growing up, probably had this. So you know, she was older than me. She liked to write stories. She's a very cool sister. But what was best, even though she was older than me, she would kindly hang out with me, and she's really into adventures. So we would, you know, we would be spies and we would build forts. So I mean, she was all about sort of like the world of imagination and adventure, and being sneaky and kind of, you know, explore, like, I don't know, exploring like this sort of magical aspects of being a kid.
Yeah.
Um, so she was great that way.
That's really
You know,
articulate. You express that well. And so what did she end up doing?
yeah. So she wound up. Does elder law now. She's doing
Oh,
like
wow.
old people. But for a while, I mean, she's doing that now. For a while though, she wound up marrying a guy who was in the Air Force. So then they went all around the world, as he was being stationed, you know, in various places. Um,
Yeah.
so she kind of had adventures, I think, in that way.
Well,
Um,
what a great sister. So now
yeah,
outside your immediate family, same question.
yeah. No, it's funny. I did have, like, I had an influential teacher, and I mean, he wasn't like, and now I kind of, you know, in retrospect, or like at this point in my life, and I mean, he was important at a particular moment in my life, and then all the ways in which I sort of began to question like his influence and push against his ideas, you know, that all kind of emerged. But at a certain point in my, so he was my teacher. You know, I was like I was saying, I was in junior high in Lubbock, and he was my English teacher. And so what grades? Like seventh grade, eighth grade. You know, I mean, it's funny. I don't know. I'm sort of skeptical of teachers as influences, maybe because I've failed spectacularly at being like one of those teachers. It was like,
I don't know about that, but I mean,
but
what did you get from this teacher? What do you think
yeah.
you got?
So he was like, you know, he's one of those guys. So he again, like my feelings about him now are different, but at the time, you know, as this like impressionable seventh, eighth grader, he had experiences in the wider world. So he was a guy. He grew up in L.A. You know, I'm living in Texas. He grew up in L.A. and then he went to school in England, and he seemed insanely erudite. You know, I mean, he was just like, so that was what seemed like something to kind of model, was just like his this like erudition that I hadn't encountered before. You know, up till then, you know, teachers of mine in Lubbock, Texas, I don't know, they were, you know, they did their thing. They didn't seem particular, you know, they also felt sort of like teachers in Lubbock, Texas. Like this guy seemed worldly. He seemed to
Yeah,
like have seen things I'd never seen before. And
yeah,
he was like, you know, he was a guy kind of, I mean, kind of like has this like encyclopedic
yeah,
knowledge, and you know, is quoting great literature and has like access to
yeah,
like thoughts I'd never thought before. So I mean, I think he was important to me as like modeling this other way of being that I wasn't seeing kind of in my immediate, you
yeah.
know, world. You know, it wasn't like I grew up in Appalachia, like in a, you know, little hollow without, you know, but still, like, you know, in this kind of
Yeah.
medium-sized town, I, I I think there's this way in which growing up in the middle of the United States, maybe it's even, I don't know, maybe even in California and on the coast, but definitely like there's a way in which it can feel pretty, like horizons can feel close, and like the
Oh,
world can feel kind of small. And he suggested that there was this world beyond, you know, the little planet that I was living on, you know. And you know, before you have a car, before there's, I feel like there's an age before you're like mobile,
yeah,
um, where like the world is pretty small. I mean, the world was like my commute from the house to school, maybe a, you know, summer vacation somewhere, you know, but nowhere special, nowhere like extravagant, you know.
yeah.
Um,
No, it
so
was
yeah,
well described, really articulate, Bill. I felt like I got a picture. So, did your parents raise you Roman Catholic?
yeah. They were serious. They were serious.
You did you check out kind of at a certain age?
Yeah, so I wound up going away to high school. Like I left, like I went to a boarding school, but part of the deal had to be, well, if I'm going to go away to school, it had to be a Catholic boarding school. So I wound up going to this Catholic boarding school in Rhode Island. And if anything can turn you into an atheist with rapidity, Jerry, it is going to an all boys Catholic boarding school. There's no better way to like squeeze all the religion out of someone than to put them into a school with a bunch of like, you know, hormone crazed asshole 15-year-old assholes from Connecticut, you know.
Is it sort of like Lord of the Flies in
Totally. Yeah, but worse. Like,
oh no,
not
and no,
even
it's Lord of the Flies meets If.
totally. No,
It's-
totally. Although I wish, you know, it'd be like If, but then without the like cathartic
oh, I
moment,
hate
you
the
know.
end of If, yeah. But do you pray now?
I I um I like to think that the people who have left the physical plane I can still communicate with. I like to think that.
Yeah. And you mean
So
that is a form of prayer for you?
yeah, for me, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
That's
guess
good.
that's a kind.
That's
I
really
think
good. That's sort of like the Mike Tyson. I just want the people who meant something to me, some sort of connection. So, because prayer is an interesting thing. One person I says, "Do you pray?" They go, "That's too personal of a question." And I was
it is.
like so enamored that they said that because it is. It is a personal question. But
Yeah.
the funniest was a couple weeks ago. I said, "Do you pray?" And she goes, "Yeah, for parking spaces." That was so practical that it was so real, you know. So
That's funny.
if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
God. I don't, I guess I just can't picture it as that kind of relationship, Jerry. He's got like they have better things to do.
Yeah, it is. I do have a slew of great answers I've gotten. No, I'll tell you the one my favorite is the guy goes, God would say, "Well, I've checked the records. We made a mistake. You're going back."
That's probably what most. I mean, that yeah.
Okay. Do evil people exist or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Wow. 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 Yeah. 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 I don't know. Gosh, I am kind of on the fence because I am open to hocus pocus and like the idea that there is, some kind of thing that might be some kind of dark forces
Yeah.
that play on us rather than that are generated for. Like, I guess I'm not so convinced that we're the measure of all things. So like
Yeah.
I but I'm gonna just kind of have to not answer the question by saying I could believe that somehow evil there is some kind of externality to it that I mean sometimes it's weird how human behavior suggests that, I mean I'm sometimes just shocked, I mean take the like mass shooting of the week and sometimes you're just
Oh,
it's
yeah. Yeah.
it's hard
No.
not to think like it's hard not it feels like movies we see where there's
Yeah.
demonic forces at play. So I don't know.
No, it's like Putin bumps the guy off and he goes, "No, I didn't."
Totally, no,
Like, come
totally.
on. That's your
Yeah,
but is this line, "Are we the measure of all things?" That's almost a question I should add. Is that from did some philosopher or writer say, "Are we the measure of all things?" Do you know?
yeah, I think so, but I don't know. I don't know
Okay,
who that
I'll
is.
look
But
into
yeah,
it.
I think you
So
could. Yeah,
so really the hidden question there really is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
yeah,
Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
yeah.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of
Yeah,
things. The
yeah.
basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of enemy. I mean, sometimes there's no not acknowledging
Yeah,
the enemy. Like sometimes it's not for you to acknowledge or not acknowledge, right? I mean,
yeah,
they become like it becomes kind of an undeniable fact that you have this enemy, I suppose. I mean, I like the idea that though that I mean, there's probably something to be said. Why are we so incapable of that? You know, I'm thinking about Trump or something. You know, it's like it seems like we can't not acknowledge the enemy, though. You
Yeah,
know, we have. Yeah,
no.
isn't there? There's that whole. I feel like another way of saying that is like the internet thing about the internet um, motto of like don't feed the trolls. I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
similar line to like
it's very similar,
um,
yeah.
yeah. And there's
Well,
some
see
truth to that, but it feels like we're incapable of not feeding the
yeah.
trolls. It's just like
Well,
we're built to.
the flip of Allen is if you don't acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. If you
Yep.
do acknowledge them, you empower them. So again, it's in what the word empower, but it's also just, I mean, the bottom line. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? What would you say to someone?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my whole MO is to flee. I mean, I'm the
It's to
worst
flee.
person to
No,
ask.
that's fine. Dude, that's honest. That's what I want. Fleeing is fine. That's like,
to,
I'm out of
to
here, you
to
know.
put as much distance between me and. But unfortunately, it's terrible advice. I wouldn't give it as
No, it's
advice.
not. I don't
But
think it's terrible at all. It's like you just okay, you know what this kid taught me this because he studied jujitsu and judo. And he
okay,
said the great warriors, the great fighters are the ones who don't even fight the fight. So
yeah,
you're
yeah,
sort of saying like flee the fact that you have to, actually it's this skateboard philosopher in Venice told me to the answer to this question the best. He said, it's all the word evokes more than its meaning. So like see name
yeah.
and a me. You know,
And
get it?
me, yeah,
Enemy. It's just
right,
like as soon as you name your enemy, you've empowered them.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
if they're kicking you or hitting you or hurting you, fleeing's probably the right thing. Because if it's the difference between James Brown and Martin Luther King. James Brown goes, "If you hit me, I'm going to hit you back." Martin Luther
right.
King says, "If you hit me, I'm going to flee or turn my back or not hit you back."
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's interesting too about the naming, or the
Yeah,
like the idea of the power in the name. I mean, there's something too. I mean, that's like biblical, right? I mean,
it's huge.
like like knowing the name of God is some sort of or
Yeah,
pronouncing that name is like all about power dynamics, I guess.
yeah.
So
Or it's just renaming Trump. DTs or orange or this. It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
dude, you're even empowering him more. It's like you're going along with the anyway. So, James Joyce was the first getting onto film. It's like this one guy I interviewed here who's a film guy. He goes, "Aren't you going to ask me about film?" We've got almost 90 minutes. He's like, "Aren't you going to?" So, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He basically, oh, wait, I made a boo boo. I got to ask this one question before that. And here it is. It goes like this. Nassim Taleb said, games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning.
Hmm.
In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. And then my friend said, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom.
Hmm.
In Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, "Oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day"? Or does he go, "Wow, I did something morally and socially wrong"? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Yeah, yeah. Does punishment work? I mean, it seems to be a deterrent. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems to. I mean,
Yeah.
the fear of punishment. That's the theory, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if punishment works though. I mean, or does it just embitter? Does it
Yeah.
does it make things worse?
It's
Um,
hard to figure it out because you wonder who invented punishment, or is it just in humans innately? And then they're like, oh no, you've got to go into this area. Or Hafiz, the Persian poet, he has the greatest line. He says, you drop the keys in front of the prisoner's cell door so they can reach out and free themselves.
Huh. Huh.
That's an amazing thought. Like,
Yeah. No, that is an amazing thought.
does the prisoner get, yeah, like, because that film about Enron, the worst
Yeah. The
guys in the,
smartest. Yeah. Like
yeah,
smartest guys in the room or whatever.
I went up to the producer once and I says, dude, your film kind of is like a training film for up and coming capitalists. And it's like, if I do something bad, all I did is get thrown in a country club jail. So what?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
he
Right.
goes,
Right.
yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, he literally said, which was a beautiful thing, because I think it was, a good kind of film that we might needed to see. Or your film with Sabine, what's it called that you showed in Ann Arbor about the
Yeah. Speculation Age. The one about the Spanish housing crisis.
yeah,
Is that the
it's
one?
just
That,
like, does it empower it, or does it help us suss it out? Like, what are we gonna do about this?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sort of like, who knows? It's like it's it's both, but it does feed into the James Joyce. So Joyce is the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago, and he said, why, this is stupid, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? And years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why
Yeah.
do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah. That's funny. So James Joyce had a problem with like watching
Well,
the
yeah,
movies.
yeah, and you'll love this one. I've been saying that for 40 years in my survey, and then I think it was P. Adam Sitney. No, who said? I think it was P. Adam Sitney. He goes, he didn't say that. And so then I go, I have to put the word allegedly said,
Yeah, no, totally.
because I
Yeah,
got it from some source. But I mean, it is a stupid setup. The Faulkner's a little more legit. Is journalism more true? Fiction can be more true than journalism, because Joyce used a book. So you
no, I
just
know. That's
you can ascribe a tree. You can go outside. Why should I read your book? I can go outside and see a real tree.
no. Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like, why should I read your book? I could spend the day walking around Dublin. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't need to read your
But
book.
I mean, it is
But,
like, go to your choice of photography.
yeah,
You know, why should you? I actually avoided being a photographer for many years, but then I started curating a photography show, and the guy goes, "Well, dude, you should shoot a roll of film." But it's like, why do I want to capture that moment when I want to learn how to appreciate it? So that's the essential. Like, why do we do that instead of uh,
no, I
not
mean,
trying to recreate it? Yeah,
I think that's yeah. I mean, there's lots. I mean, for on the one hand, I'm thinking about with you know, um, as far as I lost my train of thought. But as far as films are, as far as film as a film goes, I mean, obviously, I think the pleasure. Oh, yeah, sorry, you were talking about Faulkner and the. I mean, that I think is a really interesting idea, though.
yeah,
That the fictional. Um, I mean, I sometimes when I'm thinking about work I'm seeing, I sometimes think that the like say the fiction film can access the real or can get at truths more successfully or more succinctly than the documentary.
yeah,
Um, I mean, it is funny though that there's this idea. Well, it's not real, right? It's fiction, so therefore
yeah,
it's not real. But I mean, the underlying truths are as real for the fiction film as they are for the
yeah,
documentary. But I mean, this idea about appreciation, I think I was losing my train of thought because I was thinking two things at once, Jay. Which you know I have this experience where like part of the pleasure of shooting with the Bolex, going back to this Bolex is, I so in a film like Roswell where I was out in in the desert, New Mexico. I was doing a lot of time lapse shooting, and I have to say, I've never been more kind of present. I've never had that experience. That was the first time I think I'd had an experience of just being like utterly present and open to the world around me.
Yeah.
As I'm shooting, going through the incredibly painstaking and long process of doing a really long time lapse
Yeah.
um, shot, and I think there's this way in which, like, there's this interesting way in which these kind of like tools of representation or like media tools,
Yeah.
on the one hand, they're capturing or representing or whatever they're doing, but they're also providing opportunities for a more kind of like profound encounter with the world. And
Yeah.
maybe and that's speaking though as I think the practitioner. It's maybe a different story as far as like the viewer or the audience member, though I would argue that there's, on the one hand, you can go and look at the tree, and then you can step inside the theater, or the cinema, and you can see the tree as an art. If it's an interesting film, you'll see the
Yeah.
tree as filtered through the consciousness of a
Yeah.
fascinating, kind of like through an interesting kind of consciousness, which is
Yeah.
a very different experience than your kind of direct experience with the tree, right? And I mean, I'm not saying anything. I guess that's the case for art, right? I mean, that's making a case for all
Yeah.
sorts of art making. That it's the world plus the kind of filter of consciousness that the artist, through which the lens of the artist through which reality is kind of refracted.
Yeah.
Um,
It's beautiful, Bill. I asked for 90 minutes and we're at 90. And what I've found now, when we did it at the Michigan Theater, we went 2.5 hours. And I would love to go longer, but I don't know your time schedule. But I would also feel like maybe we could schedule a part 2 down the road,
sure.
2 or 3 months. And because usually I get through about 40 questions and we're on number 12.
Oh my, are you serious?
Yeah.
I'm too.
But
This is what all I get reamed in my teaching evals as like he never knows when to shut up.
oh, wow. Well, no, it's not that at all. It's me. I really talk too much. And I think it's great because it's sort of like a fun just spending this time with you again, because this is what I found is the great thing about the Ann Arbor Film Festivals. It's what you're doing in the lobby talking to your friends. It's not always the films on the screen, but they help.
Totally,
So,
totally.
do you want to go a little longer now, or you want to just go to part 2 down the road?
Why don't we go to part? Because I'm also my battery is really bad on this
Yeah,
computer, so
good.
I was gonna have to switch my power out anyway. So why don't we just use that as a reason to
Yeah. No, that's
like
good
go.
because
Also, it'd be fun to. I would love to chat more and again
yeah.
sometime
Oh,
down the
yeah.
way, Jerry.
Just
So
you mean just gossipy chat more too?
no, totally. So that was all off the record, huh?
Yeah, off the record. Yeah. But it's really been fun, and it was just it's always a pleasure to look on my shelf with the gazillion books piled up, and I see that little edge, the Dream Whip,
Oh,
a book, and just
yay,
to see
yeah.
the edges of your DVDs. You remember those?
I know I have a vague memory of those things. Well,
And you
thanks.
guys have a film festival. How many years have you been running your film festival?
Yeah. By the way, we have to get you. That's another must do. We're still little and don't have much money, but man, you are definitely on the short list of people we'd love to get out to our little festival. So we've been doing it. We started it in 2018, and then we've been kind of happily purring along, and then yeah, COVID kind of kicked our ass. But we only wound up having to we canceled it in 2021 because we couldn't quite make the pivot to doing it online.
Yeah,
It's just Sabine and me, so
yeah,
it was just kind of too much to take on. But
yeah.
so it's been since 2018, and we're planning on doing it. There's going to be the next one will be in late February in 2024. But it's it's like a little tiny experimental film festival, and we just we geek out
And it's
watching like
mainly how many days?
it's only 2 days, but we try to cram it with stuff. So and the other thing is all the films are under 15 minutes. So it's shorts that are under 15.
Okay.
But
Under
we
15 minutes in its 2 days. No, dude,
Yeah.
I would pay to come out and just do a 90-minute workshop.
Oh
I
my
would
God, Jerry, we
no,
would love that because part of it is we've managed to get so through the school we've got a little money that we've gotten some
yeah.
curators to come out, and then we also do a live. There's a live cinema. One of the programs is live cinema, so we bring people out to wrangle.
Yeah, I could do a
It,
live cinema, thing, that would be fun, but it's
do you remember
really
like do you know
really
Alex McKenzie from you've come
I
across
love
Alex McKenzie, right?
I love
Up in
Alex. I interviewed him on my podcast recently, yeah.
Hey, I think he mentioned that. No, he came out among other people, but yeah, it's really fun, Jerry.
Yeah,
it'd be awesome if we could figure out a way to get you
yeah.
out. So
February 2024, I look forward to it. What's the date? Do you have it?
yeah, so it's end of the month. So it's actually we just looked at it yesterday. So it's not actually so it's actually March 1 and 2
March
because of
1
the
and 2. Okay.
yeah. So it's usually end of February, but it worked out that it'll be the very
Well,
beginning of
let's
March.
stay in touch. I'm gonna send you, a proposal because, then you can look at it. I can officially either be accepted or rejected.
Cool.
Like Ann Arbor, I would send like 8. Or one time, David Donnell, I entered 15 proposals,
In
and
one
I got
year.
yeah 1 year, and I got you to give me a recommendation letter, and then eventually Leslie said you can only send us 3 proposals per year, dude. It's like this great McLuhan line. If you don't like those ideas, I've got others. But I'll
That's
send you
funny.
one 'cause I have a live cinema, workshop that I just
Oh,
typed
that's
up.
awesome.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
and
Yeah.
really
Send it.
quick, did you see these 2 books? Did you see the Craig Baldwin book?
Yes. Are you kidding? I totally saw the Craig. Well, yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then did you see the, Cinema Ann Arbor book?
No, I don't know about that one.
Dude, it's unbelievable. You
Is it
gotta
like a? What is it? What is it?
It's a huge book that a really great guy put together on the history of cinema in Ann Arbor, and it will blow your mind because it's
Oh
not
man.
just the film groups, not
Yeah.
just the festival, but the history of cinema in Ann Arbor. Once he started studying it, it's mind blowing. And
Cool. Cool. Cool.
just order one. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Could you send or could you tell me
Yeah,
what's the
you
title?
just type in Cinema Ann Arbor book and it will go
Okay.
right to
I'm just
yeah,
gonna make a little note about it.
yeah.
So okay.
And then, I always tell people Beyond the Bolex, the other film you must see is the Alice Guy Blanchet film.
Which
You
is
know that film?
what? I
You know
don't
the
know that film.
woman Okay, the woman invented narrative cinema with Méliès, and she got blackballed out of cinema history, and you will
Amazing.
freak out. You'll freak out. How did I not know this? But Bill, this is the line. Eisenstein's 8 years old. He goes to the cinema and watches this film, and then he rips it off and makes the, Potemkin staircase.
Like it
She
just is.
did it. She did
Wow.
it before him, and she made films, and we didn't know this, and it's like, how could we not know this?
Oh my
And
God. It,
yeah,
is she French?
she's French, and then she
Yeah.
moved to America.
Okay.
Yeah, it is totally mind-blowing. It's like, "What?"
And that's a film. That's a film.
That is a documentary on
Ah, okay.
Alice her name is Alice Guy
Alice
Blanchet. Yeah,
Blanchet. Got
yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, Bill, what a treat. I really love you and I appreciate your time with me. It's so enlightening. And the cool thing with you is we always have fun.
Well, Jerry, it's always great to see you. I hope we get to see you in the flesh soon enough. I mean, Savita and I are huge fans. Anyway,
Yeah,
I can't wait till we actually cross paths with you again. It's been a
yeah.
while, so
And I always say I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
me too. Me too. Till
All right,
next
Bill.
time.
Thank you.
As they say here, what do they say? They say "a bientôt."
All right.